docs.
Yeah.
All right, everyone, this meeting is being conducted with a virtual component. Anyone wishing to address the board virtually may join the meeting online at https://mountainview.zoom.us/j/810475529190 or by dialing 669-900-9128 and entering webinar ID 8104-7552190. When the chair announces the item on which you wish to speak, click the raise hand feature in Zoom or dial *9 on your phone. When the chair calls your name to provide public comment, if you are participating via phone, please press *6 to unmute yourself. Any emails received after 4:30 will not be read during the meeting, but will be entered into the record. Recently, regional and local elected and appointed bodies have been subjected to disruptive racist verbal attacks by anonymous callers during virtual public comments. The city of Mountain View is fully committed to racial, religious, and cultural equity and justice as we strive to create a welcoming, safe, and inclusive community for all. This advisory body welcomes respectful and non-threatening public comments regarding matters over which the advisory body has jurisdiction. Comments deemed otherwise pursuant to the council code of conduct and the government code may be grounds for immediately terminating a speaker's comment period. That takes us to roll call. So Assistant Manager Audrey Seymour Ramberg, please take
Chair Tang,
present.
Member Brodowski, Member Frank,
Present.
Member Langton, Member Souter.
Present.
All members save Jeanette Wang are present. Jeanette notified us that she was not well, so this will be an excused absence for her today.
Okay, that takes us to minutes approval for the meeting minutes for April 25th, 2024. Does anyone have any comments or questions about the meeting minutes? Seeing none, would anyone like to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes? I so move.
Second.
All right, let's take a roll call vote.
Chair or Vice Chair Tang, Member Brodowski,
Yes.
Member Frank,
Yes.
Member Langton,
Yes.
Member Souter.
Yes.
Motion passes.
That takes us to item 4, which is oral communications from the public. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the advisory board on any matter not on the agenda. Speakers are allowed to speak on any topic for up to 3 minutes during this section. State law prohibits the PSAB from acting on non-agendized items. Would any member of the public like to provide comment on an item that is not on the agenda? If so, please submit a blue card, or if on Zoom, click the raise hand feature or dial *9 on your phone. Numbers. Okay, seeing that there are none, we will now close oral communications and move to discussion and action items. To facilitate participation by all PSAB members, I will be recognizing in turn each member who signals they are ready to speak. After all members who wish to speak on an item have done so, I will recognize members who have additional comments. Into 5.1, this is our fiscal year 2024-25 work plan discussion. Assistant City Manager Audrey Seymour Ramberg will present this item.
Thank you, Vice Chair. This should be a familiar item for most of you in that it's an annual process that takes 2 steps for us to establish the PSAB's recommended work plan that is then brought to the City Council in September for approval along with all the other advisory body work plans. I'd like to start with an update on the current work plan. There are 5 ongoing items that show up once or twice on our agenda every year. And in 23-24, there were 4 specific projects that were special to this year. I did notice a typo in the memo that some of you may thought that it had the wrong number of projects in last year's year. So it is correct that there are 4 specific projects to this year. One of which is complete, which had to do with the recommendations around best practices to address the potential for extreme views and bias amongst our police department. That's complete. One item is ongoing in that it is the mental health crisis response ad hoc committee and their ongoing work to support and monitor how the mental health crisis response team and the trust program are addressing needs in Mountain View and helping to raise awareness about those resources in Mountain View. And then there are 2 other projects that are underway but are not yet complete. And those are the youth substance abuse prevention and the forums on community policing, the future of community policing. And as those are not complete, they are recommended to be continued into next year. And what that means for us then is that we have 8 projects that are already on the work plan for the coming year. And I would put before you 2 possibilities. One is that the PSAB either continue with its current work plan, and staff and the PSAB members on those ad hoc committees can focus on those and complete them in the coming year. Or if desired, add up to only 1 new project to be timed after the other projects are either complete or substantively complete. The process tonight is to, I guess you could first make that decision as to whether you would wish to have the current work plan carry over and not make any additions. And if you are interested in making an addition, the process would be for each of you to put forward up to 1 project that you think would be appropriate for the PSAB's work plan next year. And then we would capture all of those, kind of like a brainstorming session. And there would be the opportunity for the person who put forward an idea to state the purpose of what the project would be and what the scope or intended audience, as much as possible, to flesh out. So it is clear to everybody what the project is, and it would also be clear what it would take to carry out the project. And then after this meeting, all of the brainstormed ideas will be assessed by Mike and his team and myself to look at the criteria that are in the staff report in terms of how the project fits with the mission of the PSAB and the expertise and experience of our group, how it is consistent with council policy, how it is within the capacity of PSAB members and staff just in terms of workload, and then how it is a way to add value to something else that's already happening and not duplicating something that's already happening, and its timeliness. So those are the things that Mike and I, the Chief Canfield and I, will be looking at and bringing back that assessment and our recommendations to your next meeting, which is on June 20th. So that is the process, and I'm happy to take questions on the process, and we'll see if there's public comment, and then we can deliberate.
Thank you, Assistant City Manager. Do you board members have any questions before I open this item to public comment? Member Brodowski?
I'm looking on page 2 and 3 of our agenda. Am I in the right place?
Do you mean November? Or what's it gonna-
I'm looking at the work plan discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I understand, you have 3 projects in progress, and we've completed the one on bias and extreme views.
That's correct.
And the question is, do we can some of these, or do we vote that they stay in progress? And is that the question right now?
Well, have made an assumption that the commission would like to continue and complete those items, but you could choose to take something off in favor of adding something new. And then the question is, what is the commission interested in adding?
So that's our task right now, to see this and not to propose new things, or we're also proposing.
You can, each member can propose up to 1 new project. And then we'll do prioritizing and selection at our June meeting.
Thank you.
As usual, Joan has inspired a question for me. So
You're welcome.
thank you. My question is, am I?
Yeah.
Thank you. If we have projects that finish before the end of the calendar year, does it make sense for us to add? Staff-wise, does it make sense for us to add something to sort of fill in that spot? Just so that my concern is that as we finish projects, I would like for the public to feel like we're working and our year is not getting easier. And so does it make sense to add something staff-wise? Is there resources?
I believe there's resources for us to take on one additional project. I mean, it is the three projects that are ongoing. I would say the mental health crisis response doesn't take a tremendous lift on the part of the committee, if that's fair, Eva. But the other two are really kind of digging into their subject matter and working to create the solutions or recommendations or program in terms of the community forums. And that takes a fair amount of capacity from both the PSEB members and staff. But if both of those were to be done by January, say, end of the calendar year, you would want to be able to have something else to work on. So I don't have projected timelines when those other two projects will be done.
So to follow up on that, do we have to agree on what those would be now, or can we suggest them then to add? They have to be.
They have to be in the work plan now.
Got it, okay.
Yeah.
Any other members with questions? Okay. Would any member of the public like to provide comment or ask a question on this item? If so, please submit a blue card, or if on Zoom, click the raise hand feature or dial *9 on your phone.
We have one, Bruce England.
Hello, everyone. Bruce England speaking for MV-SAPRA, the community group that deals with public safety issues and police department details. I have to find my comments. Give me just a sec. We request that an item be added for soliciting PSAB input on legislative priorities. PSAB input to City Council on this can help to inform them for their related deliberations, which come up later. And some other advisory bodies have this built into their work plans already, which is a good thing. For example, Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, or BPAC. Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public? I will now bring this back for PSAB discussion, and I turn the item over to Assistant City Manager Ramberg to facilitate.
I will just start by asking if there are PSEB members who would like to put forward a project for consideration to add to the work plan.
I believe Assistant, wait. Are you
Oh,
calling
you want me?
people?
Oh, I thought you could do the calling out
Oh,
people. Is
okay,
that
okay.
okay?
I was a little confused. as
Is
to
that
what
okay?
Facilitation. Okay, I'm assuming you had your hand up to proposal. Okay.
Now I have a question. I guess I would like feedback on this. I would like something ongoing about our unhoused population, people who are living in their RVs. I just don't want us to think that the problem has been solved by a couple of parking lots and safe places for them to park on the street. I appreciate if anybody would.
I would
Have a comment on
so
that.
support that. I would so support that.
Can you say more when you say something ongoing, what it is that you feel the PSAB's focus or role would be?
All right. More as a vigilance to make sure that since the people who live in RVs in the past have complained about police harassment. This was the last time I heard anything was about 4 or 5 years ago. And I hear a lot from the public who, not a little bit, from the public who have heard that sort of thing and they're criticizing. So it would be nice to keep an eye on the situation in some way, and I don't know how to do it except for asking the police department itself to give a check every 6 months, or maybe somebody has a suggestion. Does anybody see what I'm trying to get at?
If I may, Member Brodowski, if I could like turn what you're saying into like a tangible work item, I'm thinking it would be like a quarterly or semi-annual report on how our police department is enforcing laws, regulations, et cetera, that affect unhoused people. Would that sound?
I'm worried especially about the effects, but yes.
Yeah.
As PSAP, we should be worried about the laws too.
Right.
Okay. So, yeah,
I would be interested, they have an officer who spends a majority of her time in that community. I would be interested in just having regular chats with her if she's available and if that makes sense, to get her perspective on, you know, how many new people are coming to the community, how many people are leaving, you know, what resources we have available for them. Is it working? Because I don't necessarily see that they're being quote harassed. What I see is that they're, and this is just might be my own personal liberal whatever, but I feel like they are in our community, they are members of our community, but they're not, we aren't able to give them the services that they need. So for instance, they live on our streets, but they don't have restrooms. So how do we, is it possible to solve that problem? Assistant City Member has mentioned before that we don't have policies that allow for restrooms in our right of ways. It's not a thing. So like, is there something that we can do to come up with a solution that solves that for this group? Because I think everybody should have a place to go to the bathroom. At my age, it's kind of a thing. Like I need to know that where I'm going, there's going to be a bathroom. And I feel like it just breaks my heart that like there are children and people who don't have a place to go to the restroom who live in our community just because they live in their vehicle. So I would like to know, like, you know, what can we suggest or what are other places doing? And does the city even want our input on that information? Because it might be outside of our scope, I'm not sure. But things like that, you know, are there things that we're able to provide, resources that we're able to provide for the children who are living unhoused in our district? So for instance, are the resource officers able to make contact with them and make sure that they're able to get to the school that they go to? Because presumably if they're living in their car and they maybe don't have a vehicle, then how is the child getting to school? Is like, I just want to know, like, how are we serving this community who, in my opinion, needs extra services that some other folks might not need? So I would be interested in that if that's possible. I don't know if that's possible. That's asking a lot.
Yeah, I'm really-
Can I make a comment?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is an extremely complicated issue. And I feel like we want these people because they're like doing our landscaping. They might be babysitting our children, you know, but they don't have enough money to afford to live here, so they live in an RV or whatever. But I also have a park across from my house where they put like a porta potty. And I mean, it's not, the park wasn't built to have a restroom, but now they have a porta potty. Like, I feel like there's a need, I do think the restroom thing is an important component, that there should be some place for these people to say, yeah, wash up and whatever, but I don't know that a portable outhouse, which is a test project that they're doing in my neighborhood with, you know, some green fencing around it, you know, I think there needs to be something more permanent, like they have those trailers with that CSA has that people can take a shower, you know, and I don't know, so I think it's something we need to talk about. So I kind of agree with Joan. It's
Something we might want to flesh out if this becomes work and yeah.
Any other questions or comments on that suggestion from Member Rodowski?
May I just clarify? Would this be an item that we would add at the conclusion of a work plan item, or would we try to take this on?
We would add it at the conclusion of, or we would switch the timing of other things to put on pause. Joan, did you have?
I just have a comment, about, porta potties or bathrooms in parks. Actually, I think we should have them in every park.
I do too, like,
Yeah, you
like,
take a kid, you take a 2-year-old
Yeah.
to the playground and immediately says, I have to pee.
yes.
So
And
it's not necessarily for people who are held, but it should just be in the park.
Yeah, and in my opinion, I'm not opposed to having bathroom, like in particular park across my street, but it's just,
thinks it should be nicer.
yeah,
Yeah, I agree. The porta potties are just,
Yeah.
they stink.
yeah.
Yes.
What type of money are we talking for public bathrooms at every
In
park
every
in
park,
Mountain View?
yeah.
Well, interestingly, there's a few different ways to come at this issue and I think it's helpful to let you guys know that this is an issue that the city is aware of and thinks about. And so one of the angles is looking at the parks. We've got a park and recreation strategic planning process that's going on now. That included a survey, a statistically valid survey, as well as a just open-ended, anybody from the community online survey. And that's one of the things that is coming up is the desire for people to have restrooms at the parks. And what winds up being the ultimate priority and the funding available for those priorities is not something that the PSAB is really going to have very much ability to influence. But that's where the criteria of, is there a way that the PSAB can add specific value above and beyond what's already being done? I would say on the issue of public restrooms, that's in public parks, restrooms, that's got a process underway that's assessing that, the need for that, the priority of that, and the feasibility of that. And it is quite a process to plumb for and have parks. And there's a policy, an older policy in place that made a distinction between neighborhood parks, which are the smaller ones that are surrounded by houses where the premises, people can have shorter times there and use their own restrooms. And that the installation of restrooms was more limited to the larger parks that would be drawing people from further away. But the patterns of use may be changing, and just the need for options for people, whether housed or unhoused, to have public places to go to the restroom is, I think, probably more of a need now than it has been in the past. I do not think the answer is porta potties in the right of way. We've explored that. There isn't council policy interest in that, so I don't think that is something that would be an effective focus for the PSAB. But you raised a lot of other things with regard to the needs of folks who are living in vehicles, and the city does partner with a lot of agencies that are working on that issue as well. And I think that what I would like to do, if this is something, clearly it's been brainstormed, it's put out, that I can assess it a bit more and bring back a recommendation as to how it might be scoped in a way that you could vote on and determine whether or not to include it in your work plan.
Yeah, also add, I would also be interested in how, how do I say this, not necessarily about police interactions, but are those folks, do they feel safe on our street? In other words, are they being victimized in some way by other crime incidents, and what the statistics of that might be? And do they have a higher calls for service in their areas where they've been, you know, placed, at least where they're not in the safe parking lots, but maybe on the streets where they're parked. Do they have calls for service and do they feel safe to make a call because of their situation? And is that does the city policy make it untenable for them to call for help if they need? Because again, but for God, there go I, and I just want to make sure that some poor child is not, you know, like curled up in their motorhome, you know, worried about like, you know, what's that noise outside, and you know, can we call the police if we need? I just feel like we should know that as a city of our means.
Yeah, absolutely. Folks who live in RVs can call the police, and I imagine that they do.
Yeah, we actually get a decent call volume. I wouldn't say it's higher than anywhere else, but they do definitely call and we definitely respond and give them the full service they deserve. So,
Cool.
yeah, and I'm sure we can generate some data.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of information that would, you know, hopefully we have the information to answer these questions. And if you're asking questions that we don't have information about, then that, you know, would be something for us to work on. You know, this is a project that winds up being selected.
I can just, how they feel, a sentiment analysis on that. We're not gonna capture that
Sure.
necessarily.
That's a survey and other stuff. Yeah, I get it.
How that's there, you know, they may not even be as open with the police about that if we are the ones asking for it.
Well, there are people who work very closely, community-based organizations and nonprofit organizations that probably could provide anecdotal information, and that might be a part of what gets shared, is being able to hear from, like Officer McPherson, who you were mentioning earlier,
Mhm.
from people who are actively working to meet the needs of residents living in vehicles. So I feel like I have enough to think through and massage to bring back to you in June. So that was Joan's idea. Is there someone else who would like to put forward an idea?
I am also, if I may, this might be completely ridiculous, so I'm totally cool if you believe that, Lolly. Is I am so interested in any kind of technology or policy that the city and the department might be interested in that reduces officer citizen contact for minor traffic violations. And I'm interested in if that's something that the department is interested in. So for instance, you know, cameras on cars, I've mentioned it before, stationary cameras or, you know, automated systems that, you know, if there's a traffic infraction, it doesn't require a cop pulling someone over. I'm not saying that don't do that. I'm saying for a lot of them in our city, maybe it's not something that requires the resource and time of an officer. And I'm just wondering if our city and our department is interested in that kind of thing. So I don't know if that's a valid work plan type item. It's more of a policy, isn't it?
Can I ask a clarifying question? Would an analogy or an example be the red light cameras that
No,
enable?
less that. Like there are other technologies other than red light cameras that I've just heard about, like, you know, things on patrol cars and
License plate.
license plate readers and things of that nature, that are able to catch, you know, I don't know. Yeah, like there's a guy that an officer that goes around and he's looking for cars that aren't registered for like 4 or 5 years. Like, is that something that like can be automated so that that officer can go do other things that may be more important? I don't know.
Can we address that?
Yeah.
A little bit. So, is it possible? Yes. Does it exist? Yes. I don't know if the community would want something like that right now or not. You know, there are, agencies that are capturing, expired registration for a year or more, right? Or even some of them are writing parking tickets automatically, just driving down the street, right? You see that a lot. In the past, when those have been brought up, they haven't been real popular here. Some of them are very expensive to deploy. And it doesn't make sense. And then there's also the more serious infractions like red light running or any of the other kind of things. Also require a little bit more legal requirement of who's driving the vehicle, not necessarily who the vehicle belongs to. And some of those, that's why the red light cameras are questionable sometimes, because they have to ID the driver, not just the car.
So my idea is not one I want to continue. Thank you for your.
Yeah, but I like where this is going. Why shouldn't we be looking into new
So then,
high-tech technologies that can be useful in police work?
so as usual, you're the best. What if the idea is an item that might research what new technology our city might be interested in? Not necessarily for traffic, but for whatever.
Something like that. I think it wouldn't be.
Would that be helpful?
I have a feeling the police department probably knows a whole lot more than we do.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, I'm sorry. There's a lot of technologies that exist, that some of them are barriers for different reasons. But there are definitely technologies that could work more efficiently with the data that's already generated. There's some AI technologies and things that are looking at information that already exists in current databases or is being fed into regular databases. And I think, Audrey, I think the city's looking at an AI policy, developing an AI policy overall. So we would fall under that as well, how those would work and things. But I mean, those are the types of things that would help for efficiency purposes, that would help in a staffing crisis issue as well, to help us be a little bit more accurate with information maybe and more efficient overall. I don't know if you have anything to add.
No, that's great.
How do you feel about that?
It feels a little bit open-ended to me. I know that technology is a topic of the community policing forum. So we're going to be hearing from the PD on some of the current technologies. I think in terms of identifying technology that would be useful, the PD would have a leg up probably on members of the commission, and in terms of knowing what's out there and what the priorities might be. And so I guess I would probably want to talk with our police captains and police chief about what would be the value added for them to have the PSAB involved in, maybe there's something that the PD wants to do, but there's an outreach component or a community engagement component or.
Because it's policy, so they don't need to come to us, right? If they decide we need this to do our jobs, then they can do it. So, and the only reason to bring it to us would just be for outreach and.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And some of the big policies we do bring to you, right? Like the flock camera, that's a big, it's common in terms of neighboring police agencies, but it's going from not having it to having it is a big decision.
Right.
And so it was brought to the PSAB. But things that are more routine would likely not be.
I kind of think when you're talking about technology and stuff like that, I don't know that you want technology that's gonna like give everybody that's parked in a bad spot a ticket, or, I think automating enforcement isn't necessarily a great way to go. But I think even the the personnel in the department, the tools which are currently in the pipeline with the whole thing around AI and the ability to make an officer more efficient by like transcribing their body cam footage to help them just write a report and get it done really quick and kind of optimize. Is there technology out there to optimize an officer's time so he can spend more time talking to people, you know, instead of report writing or whatever? I don't know. And we're on the technology front.
Yeah, I appreciate that comment because a lot of the things that were suggested at first, I can imagine many people opposed to it because they feel like it's a lot more surveillance and know that their privacy is being violated, but I appreciate Member Langton's comment about like things that actually are helpful in terms of efficiency without violating privacy and people's human rights. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is some interest in knowing more about the kinds of technology that could improve efficiency within the police department or achieve more effective outcomes. Not necessarily, there's mixed views on whether or not enforcement aids or things that, you know, surveil or are perceived to surveil.
No, but can we
are
say,
appropriate.
officer efficiency? Like, does that change it? So instead of traffic violations, can we say tech that makes officer efficiency more valuable, add value add? Does that make?
I think that
So like what you're
avoids the different perspectives that there might be around some of the other kinds of technology. And
So just for clarity, I'm sorry to interrupt you, just for clarity, what I am looking for is things that allow police officers to focus more of their time on more serious issues. Like, you guys saw some really big crimes from time to time. It doesn't really get noticed in the paper. It doesn't get like, we don't get a lot of press about it, but like, I want more of that. Like, human trafficking rings, like that was like, oh my God, that's cool. Computer crimes rings, that kind of stuff. I feel like if we're not doing all these other little things, or if, officers aren't, buried in paperwork, and transcribing their body cam footage and all that kind of stuff, maybe that means that they have more time for, solving crimes. That's what I'm after.
got it. Well, if you're open to having the PD kind of help flesh out what they would find useful in that regard, we'll bring it back and talk about it and then bring it back to the PSAP for consideration. All right, so we've got 2 ideas out on the table. Are there any others?
Do we have any?
You only get 1, Cleve.
I just want to, okay, so I won't say anything.
Whisper it to me now. I'm not sure. I don't really have one.
There was some member of the public that mentioned our legislative priorities. Something that is on my mind is California AB 1814, which is regarding law enforcement agencies and facial recognition technology. So I mean, the work item doesn't have to be on that law specifically, but just consulting PSAB on city legislative priorities. Similar to, I mean, I've heard that BPAC gets consulted on legislative priorities. When it comes to what the city should advocate for or against, I suppose.
I did, having heard this idea before. I checked in with the staff of the BPAC and learned a little bit more about what they do around legislative input. And then I also talked with our intergovernmental relations manager, Christina Gilmore, and asked whether there was a mechanism for the boards and commissions as a whole, or a past practice of the boards and commissions having direct input to the council on the council's adoption of its legislative priorities. And what I heard from the staff of the BPAC is, and I'm just looking at my notes here, that staff presents an annual summary of new legislation, and they've done that for a couple of years. And it's an informational item and not a mechanism for the BPAC to provide input to the platform specifically. They do provide comments so that the staff understands their interests. And usually the kinds of things they're interested in are things that are already being evaluated by staff, like no right turns on red or other things, so that they are consistent with the things that are already within the platform. And so there isn't this direct line from the BPAC to the council around what the council adopts as its legislative priorities. So it would be a process that would be new to do, and the council, I'm not sure of the council's feelings about that. And so I guess I would want to hear more from PSAB members as to what particular kinds of legislation or positions, because often the platform is more about positions. It doesn't say these specific bills are ones we're going to support, or these are the ones we're going to oppose. It's like things that move the city in certain kinds of directions, or that support the city to accomplish things that it views as important. So I'm wondering if from the things that you've been following or what you've been hearing from others in the community, if you have a sense of what the policy statement is in terms of the kinds of legislation that you think should be in the platform.
I think I need a restatement.
Of the question. So for example, the policy, the current platform has things like, support legislation that provides funding for, these kinds of priorities, or oppose legislation that makes mandates on local government without providing funding sources, or support legislation that facilitates the development of affordable housing. So it takes things that are city council and city priorities and policy objectives, and then translate those into things that, if there are legislation that gets introduced that address that, we have what we need to know. We can go take a position on that. We can either advocate for it, advocate against it, or maybe even work proactively with a legislator to try to introduce legislation. And so it would need to be towards some specific goal. So rather than just saying we want to provide input, I would want to know what are the kinds of things you would like the platform to accomplish in terms of what the PSAB's interests would be. I mean, what are the PSAB's interests?
I wonder if there are things that we've done in the department, like terms of policy on transparency, that we could make standard within the state. Policies for like our SROs, our policies that reduce bias within the department. If those could be on a platform to make standard within the state.
Or like the training that our SROs get, like, it just baffles me that other districts don't do that other departments don't have officers that actually go through child-specific training to become SROs. They just, hey, this is your rotation, you're off the street and you're in a school, like that just that boggles my mind. But it would be really cool if we could spread that system, everywhere else. Like that would be a position I would campaign for that.
I wonder, captains, if there is any, department policy objectives around legislation, the kinds of things that the department follows and that help the department achieve its goals or influence the department's ability to achieve its goals.
But no,
If, a lot of the policies that we get updated on, generally annually or sometimes biannually, to make sure that we have the most updated information on whatever the new rules and laws that are being changed. That's provided by our district attorney's office or a counsel coming in from that. But we're not really taking any stances on how they are. It's just more how it's going to affect the procedures and the operations of the department in general. Beyond that,
no, we just take, for the most part, we'll see new Senate bills or Assembly bills or case law that comes out of, the Supreme Court, either the state or the federal. And then we apply and review our own policies, our personnel and training unit. We'll take that information and review to make sure we're not violating anything. And then looking at best practices in our training to make sure that we're in compliance and what other, based on the intent of the law or the Assembly bill, making sure that we're going even beyond what we need to make sure that we're meeting that.
it also goes through a review process internally for policies. So we start with somebody bringing it into the system somehow, and then it gets reviewed through subject matter experts to see how it would definitely or not, how it affects our organization. So that could be anything from changes in how custody issues might work between juveniles and adults. I mean, even like if a change like Miranda was to come around again, something big like that, that would immediately get flowed through our process to figure out how we can provide the best practices and stay within the parameters of that law. That's how we work through policy and law.
So I wonder if you could say a bit more, Vice Chair Tang, about how you would see the PSAP coming up with specific objectives to accomplish in the legislative platform.
It would be tough because we all have quite differing views, don't we? But I'm just thinking like there's a lot of work that we've already done as the PSAP, and then can we build a legislative platform off of the work that we've accomplished and that our PD's accomplished?
So that's to accomplish things throughout the state that
Yeah.
are already things that
But I guess that
are-
doesn't further our work.
Right. Yeah, so the platform is really intended to support the goals of the city. So it would be to try to change a law that gets in our way, or to try to support a law that furthers a purpose
Mhm.
and support things that provide funding and oppose things that take, to be the most basic, those are like the most basic kinds of things in the platform. And so, I think, this could use some more thought. It's certainly on the list for what we've brainstormed, and I can consult with Mike and also with Christina Gilmore, our intergovernmental relations manager, to see if I can come back with something that would be concrete for you to consider for the work plan.
On further thought, I'm thinking about our work with mental health programs and substance abuse, and I'm wondering if there are legislative priorities within that could further our work there. Because we have come across roadblocks there in which,
Like how mental health is funded by state to the counties and not to us, so we have less control because it's not our money.
Right.
That frustrates me. Because I just feel like you guys do a better job than everybody else for us. So the county has other issues to deal with.
Yeah.
We have our own problems, and I feel like we would be better served having more control over our own citizens' needs versus the county having to come in and split their attention among all the other municipalities in our county. I like that.
Yeah, and what I'll also have time to do between this and the next meeting is look at our actual platform to see the extent to which some of these issues might already be in there. And I can commit to bring that information back for your next meeting. Yeah. Okay. So we've heard from three of you. Are there any other things you'd like to put forward for consideration next time?
So I think that, I don't know how long the community forum that we're working on, like what the longevity of that is, like if it's really successful, maybe we have it a continuing item. If it's not as successful, it'd still be nice to consider some way to find community engagement with the community. So I was thinking that maybe as another item, somehow have a transparency initiative with community engagement, like making sure that people have the resources to find how to take ride-alongs with police officers and communicate with that or via that way. And if the forums aren't as successful as we're hoping, then how can we, like, what's the next step to ensure that we're providing community engagement opportunities without making these big, I think it's kind of a really big thing. These forums, we're asking community members to come out, we're asking officers to have time after a long day of work, et cetera. So how can we, I think community engagement is still a really important topic. And I think that it'd be really nice to expand on that, considering how well, or maybe not well, the forums will. But also like providing resources and digging deep into what we already have and making sure that the public is aware of that and not having to dig on our website. Like, how do I become more engaged with the police department or just public safety in general? I know we have like NBPDX and that kind of stuff, but there's still so much opportunity for engagement where you're not having to fill out a resume or not a resume, but like an application to join something so you can be a part of something, I don't know where I was going with that, but still think community engagement's important.
That was the other idea that I wanted to say.
Was it?
Yeah, it was.
Oh, so you were
100%.
telegraphing.
Yeah, it was.
Bruce Sauter.
Well, I think you were like, you're putting out there.
There's telepathic energy. I wonder if that is like a revision of the existing item on community forums. Like a revision / expansion, like next steps for that item. Like, I don't see it as a completely different item. I see it as a continuation.
Yeah, I do too. I'm just not sure, like, A, is it appropriate to bring it up now and make it like a possible agenda item for something that we already have? But we are specifically just focusing on one thing, the forum. And I know that there's much more out there where we can be a little bit, provide more resources for community engagement. And so maybe that's just like a catch-all for all the things.
I feel like it's appropriate to bring it up now because you can't add stuff to it later. It has to be added now, so.
Okay, you're welcome.
So building off, I think what Vice Chair Tang was saying is that it could be seen as an assessment that the conclusion of the forums that get planned of how effective they are, whether they should be continued or whether some other form or opportunity to enhance what the PD does in community engagement would be a good focus for the PSAB. And coming into that would also be information from the PD about the things that you're already doing, because there are a number of engagement programs that probably you're aware of some of them at least, that might, by having that information brought in, help identify if there are any gaps or any things that would be particularly well suited for the PSAB to support. And that is a core part of your mission, really, which is to kind of be a bridge between the community and the police department. So I think I understand the scope of what you're suggesting. Thank you.
The comments, items to suggest.
Got one?
I don't, everybody's looking at me, I've been kind of brain, I don't know.
It's okay.
Yeah.
From my perspective,
We have enough.
it's okay.
Yeah, I don't want to give you anything else.
I just want to make sure you don't feel left out.
I'm happy to support everyone else's ideas.
Yeah. And I appreciate your contributions to the conversation.
Appreciate the spirit of inclusion.
Yeah.
Does that conclude?
That is the end of the item, this, in terms of me having what I need to do next steps.
It already looks like a lot to do.
We can only pick one.
Well, I'm gonna bring it back next meeting and you'll horse trade and vote and decide what to add.
All right, then that brings us to 5.3, which is the election of the board chair, assistant city manager.
We've got 5.2.
Am I skipping items?
Just one.
Sorry. I skipped a whole item, sorry. Okay, that brings us to 5.2. Update regarding the May 30th, 2024 forum on future community policing. I am so sorry, that was not intentional. Ad hoc committee members will present this item.
So is there a member of the committee who received the slides and is prepared to present them, or?
We got them and.
I have them, but Saul is happy to present them.
Okay.
Thank you. There you go. We're short, or you lost a person.
We did it. So happy to report that May 30th is going to be our forum number 1. And it's going to be at 6:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. at Mauna Loma Elementary School. The topics for that that we agreed on are going to be community safety, crime prevention, and community partnerships, specifically talking about technologies that we deploy now and privacy, transparency, and accountability with that, which is ironically what we were talking about earlier. In the crime prevention side, we're bringing our crime analyst in to talk about current trends, crime trends right now, and issues that we're seeing, and some future challenges as well. And in the community partnerships portion of that, we're going to be talking about how, also ironically, what you guys were just talking about, how to stay involved with the police department and how to stay connected with the police department. Some of our the things that we're doing for that and how people can be more connected. So that will meet the first one for our first grouping of this. It's going to be a kind of fireside chat presentation, facilitated conversation, and a lot of Q&A. Flyers are going to be handed out as well. This is kind of a demo of that. And QR codes are on the flyers for feedback for the next forums as well, to help inform how we're maybe going to change or flex those to meet the needs of what we get on the feedback. We may even change that survey now based on some of the feedback from here to see if there's any other ways of doing that or to better reach community members as well. So it'll stay flexible with how we're doing that. And we, again, have subject matter experts for each one of those. It is a lot of topics in 2 hours, so it's going to be pretty fast moving. And somebody probably is going to be taking notes, very detailed, which we're going to provide at the end in a push out on social media as well to talk about. These are the things that we talked about at this meeting and further questions to follow up, as well as maybe what's going to be on the next forum number 2, which we're still scheduling. So very excited that we got this one worked out with the location, very hard work on a lot of that stuff. We're also going to be providing emails for David and Derek directly for anybody that may feel uncomfortable emailing or contacting the police department directly with feedback or for questions and things like that. So we're excited to have that one. Moving into next steps, we would we're going to be collecting feedback from the community on this as well, but we are going to need to move it into the next, as a work plan item, into the next fiscal year, because we're not going to be able to meet the next 2 to be putting those in. So we're asking that we carry that over into the 24-25 fiscal year. And as we plan and schedule the next 2, they're going to follow.
I see some. Do we want to make the rest of the board like, yeah, the flyer's up there, but should we, if other members of the board wanted to be there or support, or I don't know if it would make sense to even participate, but I don't know.
Absolutely, I think it's.
I put it on my calendar just now. I've been wanting to go and I never am available, so I want to go.
Yeah, we'll start. We were waiting until tonight, but we have a social media post already ready to go that we probably going to put out tomorrow and start marketing that around as well.
Now you can go to 538.
No. I was gonna ask, do I go to, do board members have any questions before I open this item to public?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I have a question. I just wanted to confirm, May 30th at what time?
6:30 is when the doors will open earlier than that, but 6:30 is when we're going to start.
And it's at Montaloma.
Elementary.
There isn't gonna be like food or snacks or anything like that.
I'll be picking up water and some
Yeah,
light.
what, like something to drink, I don't know. Yeah.
Snacks are good.
That is-
Yes, they would be.
Mhm.
We'll definitely have snacks.
Get dessert.
You know, at the movie theater, you can go buy this big bag of popcorn that they'll just make for you and just like popcorn.
Noted too.
Also noted, yep.
It's cheap too. I was like, really? You guys would do that?
I don't know, what about, I'm sorry to like speak out of turn order, but yeah, you have to have like swag to give to the people or something. You know, like, I don't know. Mountain View Police T-shirts, or, yeah, stickers or. I don't
I'm not gonna promise t-shirts, but we'll see what we can.
know.
That's pretty cool.
Running low though. We have limited amounts of stickers purposely. Special.
Stickers were going fast at the parade on Sunday. I don't know if people got a chance to make
The fire thing.
the fire and 150th anniversary.
Yeah, it's so, sorry, but yeah, Mountain View's fire department is like the oldest one in like, is it the country or something, or?
Oh, I don't know about that. I hadn't heard that.
I just heard it's been here, it's been around, I don't know, it was like 50.
Longer than we've had a city.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's one of the first city services that got put into place.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Any other questions before we move into public comment? All right, well, would any member of the public like to provide comment on this item? If so, please submit a blue card, or if on Zoom, click the raise hand feature or dial *9 on your phone.
We have one, Bruce England.
Hello, everyone. Again, Bruce England. Before I comment for MVC, just wanted to suggest when you put the snacks out, you put a sign up that says Munchies. Be a nice touch. But anyway, the comment from MVC is, I mean, it's kind of an obvious question, but Kavita IR is no longer available to be on the, on the committee for planning these events. And so we'd be interested in hearing what you intend to do. Are you going to add another PSAB member to fill that out to help take her place? Just wondering what you intend to do with that person missing. Would you just proceed with the fewer people or what? Thanks.
Do we answer? them?
If the board would like to pose me that question, I'm happy to answer it.
I would like to pose that question. That
Okay.
was Later.
Okay, it's up to the board. If there's another member who wants to join that committee. We tend to do committee appointments as an agendized item. But former board member IR was actually also on the mental health committee, and I don't think she was on the youth substance abuse committee. So it could be that other people want to step onto either of those. It's just with fewer members and 3 committees, that does wind up meaning that people might wind up on more than one committee. But if that's your interest, we can certainly put that on the agenda for next month. And the other thing that will happen is do we have a meeting in July or August?
Not July.
Not July.
Oh.
Because once we have, well, usually it's once we have the work plan adopted that we go through the process of establishing committees. So probably you don't want to wait that long. So I can put it on the next agenda if that's your desire.
8/22.
Thank you. Would the board like that?
Please.
Hmm?
Yes, please.
Yes, please. Okay.
I'd be happy to have someone else join.
Okie dokie.
All right, I will now bring this back for PSAP discussion. Any comments from board members?
I have a question, and that's, how do we fill, Kavita's place?
The city clerk's office posted the vacancy once they received notice of her resignation. And the process is for the council subcommittee on appointments to meet. Usually they do that towards the end of the year so that they're doing interviews and making appointments to all the commissions that have vacancies coming up at the end of the year. And that exact timing of that I don't have yet, but I can come back and report to you at your next meeting on that.
The end of the year is 6 months away.
Government takes one.
Good government.
Yeah, I guess there's an efficiency around the process for all of the appointments to be made at the same time. And that gets weighed against how long our vacancies standing. And I'll check in with the clerk to make sure I understand the options for the timing there.
And
Duly noted that that's a long time to carry a vacancy. Yeah.
and with her absence is like our board now, what, if it's 3 people, it's a, like, when do we have a quorum, like a, Yes.
3 would still be 3 would be,
Has to be four.
Before 9.
Previously 4 would be a quorum, 3 would not be a quorum. With only 6 people, is 3 a quorum? In which case do our subcommittees
violate?
violate the Brown Act?
They have 3.
That is a good question. I'll have to consult the city attorney.
So like, yeah, there's potential that, or just me and Dava. Yeah, if somebody wanted to participate, that might not be proper.
Let me just, I mean, I'll have time between now and us putting that on the agenda to add back a 3rd person to both the committees that Board Member Ayer was on. I'll have information by then to inform your process.
Any other comments, questions about this? Seeing none. I'll move on to item 5.3, election of board chair, assistant city manager Rampa. Could you please provide information regarding the commission officer selection process?
Yes, Vice Chair. So this is a process that happens annually also, and it's the same process that we used in the past 2 years. Where the presiding chair or vice chair of the meeting will request nominations, starting with the position of chair. That's the first item. And the chair will ask for any nominations, and then whoever's name is put forward will be asked if they are willing to serve. Anyone can nominate anyone else, and a person can nominate themselves. The chair, after the first nomination, would ask if there are additional nominations. And then I will take a roll call vote on the first nominee. If a majority of the commission votes in favor of that first nominee, then that person is elected. If a majority does not vote in favor of the first nominee, then we would take a roll call vote on the second. If there had been a second nominee. And this would continue until there is the result of a majority vote for a candidate. And sometimes if there wind up being ties, then, which is not possible, and the odd number of people that are with us, but we still would need to have a majority, then the board can engage in discussion to try to reach a point where they can take a vote that would result in a majority. So that's the process.
Okay, so now it's time to see if there are any nominations for chair. As a reminder, anyone can be nominated and people can nominate themselves.
I have a nomination. I would like to nominate Eva Tang as chair.
Second.
The chair asks first nominee if they're willing to serve. Are you willing to serve? Yes. Are there any additional nominees? I guess, it's time to take a roll call vote on the first nominee.
Board Member Souter.
Yes, I would like for her to do that. I don't know what the official word is.
Aye.
Okay.
Yeah.
Stay.
Board Member Brodowski.
I vote for Eva Tang.
Board Member Langton.
Yeah, I support a second term.
Board Member Frank.
Yes.
Congratulations, Chair Tang. You may continue to run the meeting. Oh, we did. We didn't ask if there was anybody who wanted to speak from the public. We should do that and kind of hold in abeyance that we just had a result and see if there's any comments from members of the public. Seeing none, that result stands.
I feel like we need a gavel.
How about that big bottle of water?
Um, I'm sorry, I didn't read ahead for the question, public comment and questions, sorry.
All right.
I think this brings us to item 5.4, election of board vice chair. So then, Ramberg, could you please provide information regarding the commission officer election?
It's the same process that we just went through where a person can nominate themselves or be nominated to serve as vice chair with the same voting process.
So are there nominations for vice chair?
I nominate Fabian.
Are you willing to serve, number 7?
I am not willing to serve, actually. I'm sorry. But I appreciate you, and I think that's very, very sweet.
Well, all right.
Seeing as member Snyder is not willing to serve, are there other nominations for vice chair?
I nominate Joan.
All right, back at you.
Member Lasky, are you willing to serve?
Yes, I will.
Are there any additional nominees?
I would be willing to serve.
Now we have a decision. That's a little more.
Good.
No.
I'm sorry, my brain went to asking the next nominee if you're willing to serve, but then you just said you're willing to serve. Okay.
You can ask me again for the record.
Can I ask like, what is the role of the chair or the vice chair? They just like to have to do extra work, like what, I don't know.
Would you like to say this?
The chair and vice chair meet on a monthly basis with staff to go over the agenda. And the chair runs the board meeting, and in the absence of the chair, the vice chair runs the board meeting.
And these meetings, are they in person or do you just do them over Zoom?
We've been doing them by Zoom. We've had occasional in-person meetings.
Okay.
All right. This is a little out of order for me. Do I bring it to public comment before we vote on the
Well,
person?
yes.
Okay. So is that before? Okay, I'm checking. Or do we have any other nominees? Okay. Do board members have any questions before I open this item to public comment? Okay, seeing none, would any member of the public like to provide comment on this item? If so, if you're on Zoom, click the raise hand feature or dial *9 on your phone. None? Okay, I'll bring this back for nomination and voting process. We'll vote on the first nominee. Is that correct? Okay.
So all in favor of Joan, board member Brodowski, serving as vice chair, please signify when I call your name.
Can I vote for both? No.
I mean, it is a yes, no vote, right? So
Yeah.
like, I mean, it's roll call.
Yeah.
If Joan doesn't get the nomination, then we would go to the next nominee, right? And then you can
Mhm.
vote yes or no on the next.
Isn't it yes, no?
It's, yes, it's voting yes for, like, who would like to vote yes in support of the nomination?
No, for either of you, so.
I mean, Joe,
know.
I'm just here in case you. That's all. So, yeah.
I nominated you, but Steve nominated himself, so if you really want it, but if you don't. I don't. Okay, that's good to know.
That's the only reason.
Alright.
I feel like I knew that.
So I'm a no on Joe. I'll have to wait for you.
I think we can call that a withdrawal of the nomination.
All right, yes.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, as long as we have somebody else, yes. Withdraw.
Seeing as there's a withdrawal, it looks like our first nominee is member Brink.
All right, I'll take a vote. Chair Tang,
Aye.
Board Member Souter.
Aye.
Board Member Brodowski. Board Member Langton.
Aye.
Board Member Frink.
Right. Oh, you can vote for yourself. That's great.
You can nominate yourself and you can vote for yourself.
Congratulations, Chair and Vice Chair. Thank you for your service.
All right. That brings us to 5.5 ad hoc committee updates. The ad hoc committees will provide updates. First is the ad hoc committee on mental health crisis response. And then next will be the ad hoc committee on youth substance abuse. I will be presenting on the mental health crisis response committee. So we recently met with Trust, in which the staff of Trust shared it takes about 40 minutes to get to calls in Mountain View. If you'll recall, the team had, oh, I'm sorry, I was just going to read that verbatim, but we talked about data availability, a separate call line for Trust, continued outreach to the community, and awareness of Trust, and upcoming new billing practices to secure Medi-Cal and private insurance funding for Trust. So yeah, the response times are about 40 minutes to get to calls in Mountain View. If you'll recall, Trust used to be a smaller jurisdiction for North County, but now it includes 11 cities or unincorporated areas, and those regions are Alviso, Los Altos, Loyola, Milpitas, Moffett Field, Mount Hamilton, Mountain View, Palo Alto, Stanford, Sunnyvale, and Santa Clara. The agencies involved are working to address challenges in pulling report data from the Trust call center. So unfortunately, we don't have data to give you today because it's not possible to pull useful reports at the moment. The Trust van starts most of their days in downtown Mountain View. Keeps an eye on the schedule of workshops and community events that it can attend. And since county funding doesn't cover the full cost of service for Trust, there's a bit of a funding gap. So Momentum is putting in place new billing practices to secure funding from Medi-Cal and private insurance. And so the important part here to know is that somebody contacting Trust would not get a bill to access Trust. Like it's still like completely free. It's just if if they're able to get insurance like billing information, they can bill Medi-Cal and bill private insurance in order to cover that funding gap. So the person accessing services would never see a bill, would never get charged for anything. It's just so that they can cover a little gap using Medi-Cal and using insurance. And we're still monitoring support for Trust, and not sure when our next meeting will be, but we have some. Okay, I said we don't have data. We have a little bit, I'm sorry, that was.
Well, this
I
is
lied.
not from the database.
Okay,
right?
okay.
So what we learned is that there's a call center, which we knew. And the call center has a database where all the calls that come in get recorded, and then the outcome of those calls and how they're dispatched. But there are challenges with that database. So what the North County team of Trust run by Momentum for Health does is keeps a separate Excel spreadsheet basically with its dispatches and its field encounters. So that's what this data is.
Yeah, so it's not super sophisticated data in which we can filter for a
Right.
bunch of different things, but we can see the total dispatches here. So it's the number of times that the Trust team was dispatched to meet clients in the field, and then also the number of times the team approached a client out on the field while they were conducting visibility routes and engaging community members. So the first two bars are for the total of North County. And the second two bars are for Mountain View specifically. So that's the blue and the dark orange burnt sienna. That's for total within North County, and then gray and then light orange are Mountain View specifically. We can see that service to Mountain View doesn't represent the majority of dispatches or encounters in North County. But as a percentage of total North County dispatches, Mountain View ranges from 4% in March to 24% in January. And we also see that Mountain View dispatches and encounters appear to be trending up so far in May. There could be a number of reasons for this, like more people knowing about the service, could be another number of things, could be more people having needs for trust. I can only speculate, we can only speculate, without more sophisticated data. Remind me, do we have to do both presentations before board member questions?
No, we do not. And I'm trying to find my notes on what I've learned about where the county is in their assessment about funding impacts for trust going forward and related to Prop 1. So if I can find those notes, I would be happy to add that into your report.
Does that mean?
Are
that
there
you-
any, but you can,
Okay.
you can go to questions.
Okay,
Fine.
okay. I'm like, does that mean we need to take a moment? Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So do any board members have any questions about this presentation before I open it to? Would any member of the public like to provide comment on this item? If so, if you're on Zoom, click the raise hand feature or dial *9 on your phone. Okay. So then I'll bring it back for PSAB discussion. Do any board members have comments?
I just, the fact that there are more culture service in Mountain View is, it breaks my heart, but it's also kind of a good thing, right? Like, the service is getting used for its intended use, which makes me happy, I guess, yeah.
I mean, it's a service that is provided for reason. I mean, there was a need.
Yeah.
Right? So the fact that more people are using it, I mean, hopefully it means that more people know about it. That's my hope. And that more people are getting help.
Yeah, getting the care that they need, that maybe they weren't getting before, which again, makes me happy.
Do you know how it is being spread? Like, how are people becoming aware of it since Mountain View's numbers are kind of going up? Like, is it by word of mouth? Is it just outreach from like CSA or, you know?
I know there are some community groups that are spreading word of trust. I had notes that related directly to your question that I didn't bring. That question.
So there's public outreach that Momentum for Health does, primarily word of mouth, primarily by connecting with groups like PSAB or staff members like, you know, Kimberly and Thomas in our office, Deputy City Manager Kimberly Thomas, or Officer McPherson, who know kind of where in the community they might be most visible and accessible to people who have needs. They also keep a running schedule of events that are happening within the communities that they serve so that they can show up at those events and talk with people. And then the other way that people can get in touch with trust is by calling the 988 crisis line, which is a main number And there is triage that happens in that main number to determine whether or not a call gets then referred to the trust call center. There's a separate trust call center. As Chair Tang mentioned, one of the things that's a challenge right now is that there's no way that a person could directly call trust. They need to go through 988, and what they are, that the community advisory board that's been established, which is made up of people with lived experience and advocates in the community, are very actively attending board of supervisors meetings and in other ways communicating to the county that there needs to be a direct line of communication to trust, because it hamstrings trust's ability to promote themselves. They can promote 988, and that people can ask for trust once they get into the 988 system. But the feedback that we've heard is that it's not terribly straightforward.
If I may offer a correction, there is a direct line to trust. It's 800-704-0900. And then you press 1. I think the issue is that there's no direct line from PD to trust. So that if like the police department sees somebody that might be in need of trust, then they still have to like call the center and then go through a bunch of prompts and lines, yeah. In order to reach someone. I think there's the issue that 988 doesn't connect directly to trust. I think that might be so like you'd have to get to a person and then ask for it.
Right. I wasn't, I hadn't caught the fact that there was a direct 800 number for trust. So that's helpful to know. And these other doors in may not be as efficient in terms of getting people to trust.
Right. So that is.
I think it's wonderful. Like obviously Mountain View is such a special city, and the fact that like something like this is super important. We have the resources in this area, you know, in the peninsula or where, you know, in the North County, I guess, and it's like I would say I'm grateful that we have this for those who are in need of it, and the trending numbers that are up is kind of a hopeful that they can continue to find the resources and help that they need through trust. And I think that is really special. And I think that's really wonderful that you've brought this information to us. So thank you so much for that. It's really special.
Unfortunately, I'm not finding my notes. Part of what I recall is that there isn't a ton of clarity from the state yet in terms of how the new sources of funding that are associated with Prop 1 and its passage might flow to counties. I know that our concern was the other direction of the things that are funds that currently are at the county level being transferred to state. And while I don't have information about that, I do have the conversation that's happening at the Board of Supervisors around ways to continue trust past its 5-year pilot, and that there is optimism about doing that. And the strategy that Chair Tang discussed about billing for Medi-Cal and private insurance is part of that strategy of looking at different revenue streams that exist that can be charged, as well as other funding sources that could be used to continue trust. So I think it's because it's a 5-year pilot, we're in year 2, that they're already talking about continuation funding, I think is a positive sign. But I think that based on Chair Tang's presentation, there are still a lot of bugs to work out in terms of how awareness is raised and how good data is made available and how North County can have the coverage. I mean, if there are all these other places that our North County team is going to, like Alviso and Milpitas, and not just Palo Alto, Mountain View, Los Altos, Santa Clara, and Sunnyvale, but places that are farther afield. And, you know, we want to make sure that the needs of Mountain View residents are being met. So I think there's still more that we're hoping that we can do and that they will do to really build the awareness of the program and establish it more consistently in Mountain View.
Comment. Any other comments from board members on this? Okay. We can move on to the next committee update, the ad hoc committee on youth substance abuse.
Does somebody have a report on that? I don't.
I did receive one from the police department, and I don't know if they got a chance to connect and provide that to a member of the committee.
It didn't have notes on
Didn't have notes on
it. It
it.
was just the screen.
Okay, well, we've got the screen pulled up. Saul or, well, it was from Evan, but we don't have Evan, but I'm
Right.
saying if either of you could present, that would be helpful.
It's beyond what's on the slide.
Yeah, so it appears that they attended the county health meeting on intoxicating hemp sales for youth. They discussed topics which was related to obviously the hemp sales, and then it sounds like they're working on drug education in schools, and they had a delay in their board meeting. Action items that are coming up are a meeting with student advisory board, so with the youth services unit supporting that. And then looking for additional ways to be involved in drug education in schools. And so they are still waiting to put a concrete date in June, but that's when the next meeting will occur.
Well done.
Closely done.
I'm sorry, yeah, that was,
See what a little time off will do for a guy.
Do board members have any questions before they open this item to public comment?
I might have a comment. There was, I did make a part of the, I did a quick and dirty internet search on what has been useful in reducing drug use among high school students. And from the 10 or 15 papers I was able to find that were recent, the only thing that seems to work is early education starting in junior high school. And that only reduces the incidence by 10 or 20%. So I did want to make that point. Doesn't mean it's useless, but we have to bear in mind that it's a pretty tough problem. That's it.
Was that something that you had available to you when the committee met last, or will you be bringing that information to the next meeting of the committee?
No, it was available, but at the last minute.
Okay,
At the last minute of the meeting, so it wasn't absorbed. So I wanted to bring it up.
okay.
All right. Just checking for questions before we move on to the comment. Would any member of the public like to provide comment on this item? If so, if you're on Zoom, click the raise hand feature or dial *9. Seeing as there are No public comments. I will bring this back for PSAP discussion. Do any board members have comments? As there are none. That concludes 5:5. And then the next item is item 6, PSAP staff comments, questions, and reports. The next item is board staff comments, questions. Next item is board staff comments, questions, and committee reports. No action will be taken on any questions raised by PSAP at this time. Do any PSAP members or staff have comments or questions?
I just have a comment. I think it's a comment. The development and the sort of evolution of the Castro Street thing. Can staff comment just generally on how far along it's gone?
Yes, there is a interim pedestrian mall that's been approved by council and is implemented to large extent, but still will have some improvements that are made to last over the next 3 to 5 years, during which time the permanent pedestrian mall will be designed and the funding for it will be identified. Right now, it still exists as a street with curbs and sidewalks and movable bollards. When it is made into a permanent mall, it will be flush all the way across and will have different and new and pedestrian oriented surfacing as opposed to asphalt surfacing. And we'll have retractable bollards. And will also be integrated into some work that will be done at the grade crossing for the transit center and train tracks. The full-blown grade separation that was to happen at Castro is on hold because of significant funding or cost increases and funding shortfalls. But in the meantime, for the interim, we have a patio permit process so that restaurants can apply for and establish patios and along their street frontage. And the city installs the decorative fencing that is consistent across all of the patios so that it has a nice look and feel throughout. We're doing a lot around landscaping and installation of social zones so that there are games and things for people to interact with each other and places to sit above and beyond the dining patios. And then the next step is going to be to create a central walkway with a painted design down the middle of those 3 blocks and to have all of the bollards painted in colors to match the street treatment. And then we're doing a call for artists so that some of the bollards will actually be painted with public art. Yeah. You're welcome.
I've already seen some of the bollards painted in city colors.
Yeah, we did samples of all of the colors at the Villa intersection and decided kind of what the schemes, what was going to go where. And we'll have a contractor out in the next 2 weeks probably to get those all painted.
So a bollard is a big ball.
Yeah, the big concrete ball, because believe it or not, we did have somebody drive through the, this was before the current arrangement of the bollards and the fencing, because the fencing in itself is not traffic resistant, right? It would could be driven through, but even with the bollard, somebody drove straight on Castro through at California and pushed the bollard into the pedestrian mall. Luckily, at the time that there was nobody around, but those are the kinds of safety precautions that we have to take by having those big concrete bollards out there.
Yeah, I'm wondering about pedestrian safety around Castro as well, because I mean, I live really close here, so I come to downtown quite often, so I see a lot of drivers running the red when we're across Castro at these intersections, which is really dangerous for pedestrians.
Yeah.
So
I also see a lot of pedestrians walking across
I mean, yes, there's both sides, but one
No,
is a giant metal.
no, I mean, I see a lot of pedestrians not realizing that it's not, it used to be like everybody had to stop there. And then,
Yeah.
and now, like, I think pedestrians are used to that, and so they just walk, but they don't look on a green light for cars,
Mhm.
and that freaks me out.
Yeah.
I'm like hyper aware. Also, last year, Target has those same bollards in Sunnyvale,
Oh, I've seen those.
and they had,
bright red.
they had a Christmas wrapping for it. It
Oh.
was so cool. They had them wrapped like presents. It was like, it was just a covering. It was really cool.
Yeah.
Festive suggestion.
Yeah, just a suggestion.
Yeah, and other things we're looking at in terms of murals and, you know, ways to make the vacant storefronts that, I mean, there's some very persistent vacancies that, if they can't be filled, can perhaps be covered in some way. And then we're working very hard to support property owners to be able to fill their vacancies, trying to streamline the permitting process and
Are they
have an
able to do things
ombudsman
like
to support
pop-ups?
them. Yeah, we've got a consultant on board that organizes pop-ups and helps staff bringing in multiple retailers or vendors or active art, you know, engagements. We've got a couple different art partnerships to try to bring more art and more participatory activities, because that's really the draw. That's what people want. They want to engage and they want to do fun things.
Right. That looks really cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
I guess I'm a little concerned about, I guess the recent resignation of one of our members, and I'm wondering if our remaining members feel engaged enough to keep going, and because I mean, of course, the work that we do is really important, but and I understand that it does get taxing, especially if you're serving our community. So just wondering how everyone feels at the moment.
Well, I'm sorry we've lost Kavita. But I don't think that changes my and serving in the PSAT.
Being here reminds me of my dad, so.
I look forward to see what, you know, 6 months away, but, you know, who we bring on and what they might contribute.
Maybe it'll be before that.
I will check. Yeah, I understand the interest for sure.
And shout out to Melvin.
Oh, our former staffer.
Yep.
Have people heard where Melvin Gaines, former principal analysts, former staff to the PSAB wound up?
I mean, last I heard, he was city manager at Palo Alto.
Yeah. Yeah, when he left here, he went to Portola Valley and then as assistant city manager, and now he's a city manager in East Palo Alto.
Wow.
Yeah.
Continue the inquest. The inquest. How do you feel?
I feel fine. I'm grateful that we have this board. You know, I'm grateful that I'm given the opportunity to be active in my community, and I think it's important.
I think it's really cool to have the time from these gentlemen to come and talk to us about how they do their work, because not only is it fascinating, but it's super important. And it gives us an opportunity to thank them for their service. So that's kind of cool for me.
How about you, Eva?
And truthfully, I am tired, but much more because of other life things. And I think I really took on a lot of committee work at the beginning, but I'm trying to like lay back a little bit. I guess now as chair too. I mean, I guess that doesn't make sense to say because now, all right. But I mean, you know, I'm here till I'm not here, you know? I mean, which means till my term ends, so.
All right, good.
And also, I think Saul is the first police officer that I met when I moved here at my kid's school. And then I want to say it was at the International Fair. And he talked to me that day, like felt like forever. Like we talked about all kinds of stuff, like the stuff that was going on at the school and the SRO program. And it was like a really great welcome because it was a hard time for me in my life. And so he's a very special person to me, and it's really cool to be serving on this with him. So thank you.
Same.
Okay, I'm done.
All right, anything else for item 6, y'all? Yes.
I wanted to tell you that we'll have an additional item on our agenda, beyond what was on the tentative agenda list. And that is to, hear a presentation, about the revenue measure that the city council will consider putting on the ballot, in June. They'll make that decision on June 25th. And so at our June 20th meeting, I'll be providing information about that revenue measure. And one of the intended uses for the funds to be raised for that revenue measure is for public safety building that is in need of replacement. So you'll get to learn more about that next meeting.
Oh, and then I have a question. The next meeting was not originally on my calendar. If I have to travel for that, am I able to attend that meeting remotely by chance?
You would not have, no, well, yes, but under the original restrictions of the Brown Act, which require us to list your location on the agenda, requires you to post an agenda 72 hours in advance of the meeting at the location where you're going to be participating, and for it to be a publicly accessible place so that if any member of the public, you're saying you're going to be in Germany?
No, I don't know. I don't know yet.
It's not as if that's a likely occurrence. There'd be a member of the public wishing to speak, but it is how the Brown Act works and would we be required to do that. Because it's a specially scheduled meeting, your absence would be excused because it wasn't something that you could plan around when we first adopted the schedule.
Yeah, but I would want to be there.
But you would want to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Appreciate your dedication.
Yeah, I mean, I could make that work properly.
okay. Hope so.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, if I might just for further information on that, the Brown Act has been amended such that there are some exceptions where that process of noticing the location on the agenda, posting in that location, being publicly accessible is not required to be done. And that is when a member has a contagious illness, but still is able to participate or is caring for someone. I believe that's one of the exceptions or as a way on city business. Say if you were at a, public safety conference or something. Those are the things that would be enable you to participate remotely without going through all those other things.
Thank you, Chair.
We will now move on to the final item of tonight's agenda, which is adjournment. This meeting is adjourned at 8:54 p.m.
Thank you, Chair. Congratulations.